Tonight, Europe faces a delicate moment in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Reports have surfaced of a secret plan between Moscow and Washington aimed at ending the war, and EU leaders are weighing the implications. Arriving at a key meeting, EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas emphasized a central principle. Any peace plan must have both Kyiv and European nations fully on board. What we as Europeans have always supported is a long, lasting, and just peace, Kallas said. She stressed that in this conflict, there is one clear aggressor and one victim, noting that Russia has yet to make meaningful concessions. Instead, overnight bombings of civilians continue, targeting schools, hospitals, and apartment buildings in an effort to maximize suffering. The EU's position is firm. A viable peace cannot ignore the voice of Ukraine or the broader European consensus. Kallas's comments follow a wave of speculation about behind-the-scenes negotiations, which reportedly involve only Moscow and Washington. European leaders have been excluded from drafting the plan, prompting concerns over transparency and legitimacy. No European leaders were involved in preparing the proposal, Kallas confirmed. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot echoed this sentiment, insisting that peace must not mean capitulation for Kyiv. He called for discussions that start with a ceasefire along the contact line, allowing orderly talks about territories, security, and long-term stability. Both Kallas and Barrot underscore that any lasting solution must respect Ukraine's sovereignty, while simultaneously creating a framework that addresses the broader security landscape of Europe. Spain's José Manuel Albares reinforced the EU's stance, emphasizing that Ukraine and the EU must be involved in any potential peace plan. This reflects a broader European consensus that unilateral negotiations between global powers cannot dictate outcomes on the ground. Yet, opinions within the EU are not entirely uniform. Hungary's Péter Szijjártó has taken a more skeptical view, suggesting that continued financial support to Kyiv risks funding what he calls a war mafia, and warning that the idea that time is on Ukraine's side may be an illusion. These divergent perspectives highlight the challenge facing Brussels, balancing support for Ukraine with differing national interests and domestic pressures across member states. The EU's discussions come against a grim backdrop. Ukraine is still reeling from a recent Russian strike on Ternopil that killed 26 people, with 22 more reported missing. Civilians remain the primary targets, as evidenced by ongoing attacks on infrastructure, hospitals, and schools. Kallas noted that 93% of Russian strikes target civilian locations, reinforcing the EU's argument that concessions cannot come at the expense of justice or the lives of ordinary Ukrainians. Analysts suggest that the EU's position aims to prevent any perception that Kyiv might be pressured into a hasty agreement under duress, while simultaneously signaling to Moscow that European support for Ukraine is unwavering and that the path to peace requires accountability and cooperation. As Europe debates the potential peace plan, the core question remains: what conditions are non-negotiable for Kyiv and its allies? Analysts note that Ukraine has consistently demanded a ceasefire as the first step toward meaningful negotiations. Without security guarantees, any discussion of territorial concessions or political compromises is unlikely to succeed. EU leaders have reiterated that a durable peace requires dialogue that protects Ukraine's sovereignty, respects international law, and ensures accountability for attacks on civilians. Kallas and Barrot stressed that Europe cannot allow negotiations to proceed in a vacuum, where decisions about the fate of Ukraine are made without Kyiv's consent. This insistence reflects a broader concern in Brussels. Peace imposed from the outside could destabilize the region further. The reported Washington-Moscow plan, shrouded in secrecy, has prompted cautious responses across European capitals. Many officials support any initiative that could reduce violence, yet they warn against arrangements that might compromise Ukraine's territorial integrity or security guarantees. Spain's Albares stressed that European involvement is crucial to legitimizing negotiations, while Callas highlighted that dialogue must focus on justice and protection for civilians. The EU is also navigating a delicate balance between supporting Ukraine militarily and diplomatically, while maintaining unity among member states with differing perspectives. Hungary's Szijjártó exemplifies dissent within the bloc, raising questions about financial support and the long-term sustainability of backing Kyiv. The human toll of the conflict remains staggering. Beyond Ternopil, multiple cities continue to endure missile strikes targeting schools, hospitals, and essential infrastructure. Analysts warn that ongoing attacks on civilian areas not only inflict immediate suffering, but also complicate future peace negotiations. Any plan that does not address humanitarian crises risks losing credibility among the international community. Callas's emphasis on civilian safety serves as both a moral and strategic argument, signaling that Europe's engagement in peace talks is anchored in protecting lives, not merely geopolitical calculations. For the EU, humanitarian considerations remain inseparable from political strategy. Diplomatically, Brussels is signaling that Europe seeks a role in mediating or endorsing any peace arrangement. Leaders emphasize that legitimacy comes from inclusive dialogue involving Ukraine, the EU, and global partners committed to a rules-based order. The situation also underscores the importance of strategic patience. Rapid agreements that ignore security, justice, or the voice of the affected population could fail spectacularly. Meanwhile, the contrast between countries advocating full support for Kyiv and those expressing caution, such as Hungary, demonstrates the internal challenges the EU faces in presenting a united front. Maintaining cohesion will be essential if Europe hopes to influence any final peace settlement. Observers note that the stakes are not just regional, but global. A peace plan imposed without Ukraine's consent could embolden aggressors elsewhere, undermining international norms. Conversely, a negotiated settlement that incorporates Kyiv's demands, European oversight, and security guarantees could serve as a blueprint for conflict resolution in other contested areas. EU officials are acutely aware that their credibility and leadership are on display, and any perceived sidelining of European voices could weaken their diplomatic influence. As such, Brussels has emphasized transparency, coordination, and solidarity with Kyiv as non-negotiable elements in any credible peace process. As Ukraine mourns the victims of recent attacks and the world watches for signs of diplomatic breakthroughs, the EU's message is clear. Peace must be long-lasting, just, and inclusive. Any secret plan, no matter how well-intentioned, cannot succeed without Kyiv's agreement and European participation. The insistence on starting with a ceasefire, addressing civilian protection, and involving all stakeholders highlights Europe's attempt to balance pragmatism with principle. Analysts suggest that the coming weeks will be decisive, testing the EU's ability to unify member states, support Ukraine, and shape the trajectory of the war. The stakes are enormous. The choices made now could determine not only the future of Ukraine, but the credibility of Europe as a guarantor of peace and international order.